Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
And ready and raring to go.
All right, yeah.
Always until about 3 o'clock. No, there'll be another story. We'll pick up a few now today because we're going to be talking about, the coronavirus. And of course, the virus is incidental to all the tragedy going on, to the economy, to what they're doing to our civil liberties, and all this nonsense. So the virus is very incidental, but they were able to take a problem and turn it into a monstrosity of a crisis. And there are some people who don't mind taking advantage of every crisis there is. But to me and to us that we've talked about in this program is it's amazing what they've gotten out of this crisis. I mean, this is a huge effort that they've made, and it's worldwide. And we want to talk a little bit about that, on what the theories are about how are they able to do this, because we know we're a lot smarter than the conspiracy people, and that they shouldn't be so smart, but their conspiracies are able to bring it together. But we'll talk about that a little bit. But before we get into that, I want to mention something that just came out here recently by Fee Foundation, and they're talking about, they take the crisis, they have all these rules, there's a shutdown, they close down the schools, and then you have to do your schooling over the internet. So they make people use the computers and interact with their teachers, which confuses the teachers and confuses everybody. Some people don't have computers, but guess what? It gives the opportunity for the Child Protective Service to get busy. They're always looking to be busy.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bad group of people because they're substituting for parents, and the conditions are such that, they get away with it. So they see a problem. They think some people are truant. They're not attending their classes with these mandatory classes, but they have reasons. Maybe they're distracted. Maybe they're disinclined to. Maybe there's not a real crisis, and maybe the parents are working. Who knows what? And they don't have computers. So it's also artificial. But CPS said, and guess who's in support of this? Kamala Harris.
Yeah, sure.
She likes that. Use another agency to crack down the inefficiencies of the other agency. So the CPS is now looking into this and threatening parents, because ultimately, and too often over my years in medicine and different things, the CPS is very, very authoritarian. And I've seen examples where they took kids away from homes on meager type charges, and it took them a lot of money and a lot of time and effort for the parents to get their kids back. But we want to concentrate a little bit more on what's how does this come about? And Jeff Tucker wrote an article recently, and he went over this and had some important points, because I'm sure he's not going to say, oh, Tucker doesn't believe in the deep state. I think he still believes in the deep state and that sort of thing. But what he's saying is maybe there's more to it than just saying there's a conspiracy. People got together and say, oh, there's a virus coming. Let's deal this virus, and this causes this problem, and then we can do whatever we want. So he questions this, and then he really then questions just ignorance, that people are doing this. They decided this was a better way to run things. And just the simple cause of ignorance doesn't explain it either, even though a lot of people who get involved in these kind of conspiracies and these efforts, they aren't totally ignorant. They know exactly what they want, and they have a goal. But it isn't going to be totally explained just by saying people either in part of those big conspiracy, or they're just ignorant and they don't know what to do. And his thesis is that it's just copycat. I keep arguing the case that we live in an age where we're financially bankrupt and morally bankrupt. So what do we have? We have like the media. They don't have the money, and they don't have ethical standards, and they copycat. And he thinks what happens is a country comes along, and maybe we were the instigators, because we're in charge of a lot of things. But then each country, instead of investigating it, they just went along with it. I have to do what the other countries have done, and they join in and doing the same thing. And this is maybe a reflection of the bad effects of what people thought about a global economy, not a global libertarian economy, but a global economy where people control things. And I think it can be controlled to what happens in the media. You see the same things coming out in the media, but here they ended up doing the same thing throughout. There have been a few exceptions where either there was an occasional leader that didn't go along with the problems, or circumstances were such. But basically, the whole world, chimed in, and there's a lot of factors that go into this. And I think this article that Jeff wrote is worth thinking about.
Hannah Arendt coined the term the banality of evil. I think you can talk about this in this context. And Jeff starts this piece, and it's a great piece, and we recommend it. It's on the Ron Paul Institute website, ronpaulinstitute.org, if people want to look at it. But he starts out by with what I was thinking: how is it possible that basically the whole world, with a couple of exceptions, did the same thing at the same time? I mean, down to the very, very small things. And people will say this is some kind of conspiracy. Someone cooked this up. And I would think it's possible, but it seems pretty far-fetched that you could get everyone to do this. And he has a different conclusion, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Why did the world do the same thing? It's because they just copied what the first people did. Unfortunately, the first people were China, so not the best thing to copy if you're interested in civil liberties. But China locked down, they suspended liberties, they tracked people, they did all sorts of things. And so the rest of the world said, hey, that looks like a pretty good idea. It's better than coming up with a unique response to unique situations. How about a one-size-fits-all? And that's what they did. And I think Tucker really hits it on the head. But he talks about in the article things like, why can't you try on clothing in Melbourne or Texas? The same thing. First, you had to stay indoors. You can't go out. You get arrested. Remember the guy arrested for surfing. You can't go outdoors. Then when they finally reopened the restaurants, well, you can't go indoors. You got to eat outdoors. And Tucker said, are we supposed to believe that the virus lived outside for a while, but then later moved inside? So there you can't do it. And the other thing he points out is the curfew. So the virus only comes out at night. It's like, Dracula or something. So he's got a better suggestion for why this happened, is that they're just copying each other without thinking up something. And the media is not about to dig into it. You touched on it too. I'm sure you want to go into it more. The media just plays along because they're lazy and they're stupid.
Right. And sometimes, honestly, short of money because of our economic system.
Yeah.
But I think there's two factors that I've decided that are very important for the enemy to be successful. Even though they might not have conspired before it all started and they say, we have a plan and this is what the results are. I think the results favoring these people that enjoy lockdown probably far exceeded their hopes. They just took advantage of some dumb policies and they built on them and made it work. But two things that they had to accomplish first was developing fear.
Yeah.
You have to scare them. And this is why one of the most detestable results has been to terrorize the kids. The kids are scared to go out, and they read this, and the statistics are showing that they're very anxious, and some are committing suicide, and the whole works. But I think the whole thing of gullibility. I mean, the parents and so many people that I'm surprised they're so gullible. And they say, well, yeah, but they put a lot of emphasis on the on Gauci, and and he's official and he's an expert. You aren't. You don't know much about this, and they accepted this because even though he was pure politics, they might write off a politician, as being a politician. But this guy was not a politician. He was presenting the facts, and of course that the people who were gullible were susceptible to this, grabbed hold of this, and they bought into this idea why it's so horrible. But I think the ice is starting to crack on this because the people are starting to realize. You mean there's not that many people dying?
Yeah.
Like less than 1%, the chance of dying, a fraction of people.
Yeah.
Now they're disappointed. They might run out of an enemy.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we have a graph. This is from Jeff's piece, and this really demonstrates in graphic form how the world copied each other. And these lines are The left is the percentage of countries that adopted the following measures: school closure, cancellation of public events, restrictions on internal mobility, workplace closure, public information campaigns. They literally all went in parallel early in March. There were very, very few outliers, and they all basically went at the same time. The thing about this that's interesting, that obviously they copied each other, but the disaster, the true disaster of this, well, we see it in the U.S., and Jeff Tucker wrote about this. By copying each other, they actually made the situation worse in the United States. And he points out that in the Northeast, where the virus came much earlier, they started locking down after they were actually well on the way to herd immunity, which we see now in New York and New Jersey. Nobody's dying. But of course, the South and the Sun Belt states said, oh, they did that, let's do the same thing, because we've got a bunch of lawyers saying if we don't do it, we're going to be liable. So they shut down before the virus even arrived in these places. And so that's why when you started opening it, you know, the Sun Belt states, you had the second wave, which wasn't a second wave at all. It was just that the virus had been there, just waiting around for people to come out and play. And that's what happened when they did go out. And that's what's normal. And that's why we're seeing the numbers, even cooking the books in the Sun Belt states and elsewhere, the numbers are crashing, hospitalizations, deaths, even cases crashing.
Well, that's one thing for sure. The facts are on our side of the argument, but they're slow in coming, and to reverse the gullibility and this fear-mongering is a big job. Luongo made a good point, and I can add one other symptom that you have to look at. I talked about fear and gullibility, but what about hate?
Yeah.
I mean, what do the Democrats do? I mean, everything they've ever done, not for 3-4 years, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Probably when Trump was born. I'll bet they hated him when he was born. But anyway, the fear, everything, you know, Trump gets blamed for everything. So if they can put a monkey wrench in this, they do, and they have been, because do you think they're motivated by really caring about people? That's why, you know, in many ways, I feel comfortable about talking about politics and economics, because a libertarian has to not be nonpartisan, because there's not a party. We can't say we can't defend the Democrats and we can't defend the Republicans, but at least an honest libertarian should present some facts that should neutralize some of this, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for it, but they, you know, just in Washington, going along is a big deal, you know, and there's a political pressure to go along with it, and you know, they can have spending and special projects and special sessions, the whole work, and it's all partisan, it's all anti-Trump. You have to now. The big thing in the news now is how many gullible Republicans can you find that said, you know, we have to hate Trump.
Yeah.
Hate Trump is more important than pointing out that maybe if the Republicans did what they said they want to do, it wouldn't be so bad. I remember early in my political career, first year or two, I was getting a lot of heat because I was a different type of Republican. So they said, well, you're not supporting our current president at that time. And they said, we want to, you know, write this resolution in condemnation of Iran, what he's doing. And I said, let me do something else. Let me get out let's look at the platform that we ran on. You know, the platforms sometimes are pretty good.
Yeah.
So there was not a thing in the platform that I was much, much closer to the Republican platform than any of these guys that were ready to jump on me because I just didn't bow to the Republican president.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about just hatred for Trump. And it's not based on any principle. I mean, we've been very critical. I think last year we had a couple of shows very critical. In fact, we were hit hard by our audience, very critical, but it's on specific issues that we think he falls short on. Iran, Syria, these sorts of things. It's not just hating him because of who he is or what he looks like or what have you. So I just wanted, before we completely steer clear of Tucker's piece, I wanted to read the last quote, because I think this really captures everything. And he did a really good job. So why did so many governments go nuts at once, disregarding their own laws, traditions, and values, by bludgeoning their own people with the excuse of science that has turned out to be almost completely bogus? Some people claim a conspiracy, but a much simpler answer might be that in their ignorance and stupor, they copied each other out of fear. That, I think, is the epitaph for the whole COVID response and the whole destruction of really of the U.S. based on it.
Yeah, here was a headline supporting that, and this was on Zero Hedge. It said, and they were talking about an Oxford professor, and they said, "Get on with your lives." That's his close. Oxford professor says, quote, "People have become overly frightened of COVID." Obviously, that is the case, and people need to get on with their life. And I think that is the case. I think I hear more and more stories, of restaurants opening up. Oh yeah, they have to pay a little bit of lip service, to the regulation. Signs up, which I don't even like the signs because that's sort of a bow, to the authoritarians. But anyway. More churches are starting to open up, and more grocery stores are opening up, and but it still makes me very uncomfortable. I don't feel like going out and doing my own shopping. I just don't. I don't want the confrontation and talk to people who don't have any idea, what liberty is all about and what responsibility is all about, nor will they accept. Too many people on the street will not accept that this is not the most dangerous virus that ever existed in the world. The evidence is not there.
Yeah, that is. And you mentioned Tom Luongo, who's been on our show, and a good writer, very insightful. In the piece that you mentioned, we saw it on Zero Hedge, but I know his Gold Guts and Guns, I think his Goats and Guns is his blog. But he points out that, as you say, a lot of it is driven by hatred. He from Biden's speech, he says Biden would lock the whole country down if, quote, the scientists told him to do so. And that's what Biden said. Would you lock the country down? I'd lock the whole thing down, the scientists said. But the question is, which scientists? Because, you mean Dr. Atlas? How about Dr. Ioannidis from Stanford? What about Anders Tegnell from Sweden? These guys, are they not scientists if they don't say what you think they should say? And the other thing is the CARES Act. That's causing more problems because the government response has caused hospitals to artificially inflate the numbers. It's caused all sorts of problems. So, this whole idea that Biden is going to trust the science is pretty well undermined by the fact that the science, as you have said many times, is completely politicized.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing, more evidence is coming out. More people will be exposed to the truth. But I would like to go ahead and use the quote that you and I talked about from Dr. Burks. Yeah. To me, this is really pretty good. Of course, she's the expert at the CDC. Okay, excuse me. He says, this is an optimism from her. This is great optimism, sort of. When people start to realize that 99% plus of us are going to be fine, it becomes more and more difficult to get people to comply, she said. And more, she's worried about it. Yeah. What are they going to do?
Not listening to me.
They won't believe this fake news. They're in a crisis, but their answer is not difficult. They already have the next virus lined up. And today I saw another puff piece says, I think we're going to have to deal with viruses for a long time. Yeah. Well, you want to deal with them for a long time, you can deal with them forever. Nature's been dealing with them for a long, long time, and most people survive viruses. But we're doing everything we can to kill, our natural immunity, and that's where the problem is. And that's, we wanted to minimize the stupidity of being the main cause, but that is a major cause that we have because the gullibility and the stupidity and the hate going on rather than being objective.
Well, you opened this segment, which is, the lies of COVID and the distortions. So I have a couple of clips as long as we're on that subject. Let's look at the next one. This is close to home. We've talked about the judge of Collin County here in Texas. This is fascinating. He said over the weekend they have no confidence in Texas coronavirus numbers. Imagine that. It's amazing. Here's what he said. This is County Judge Chris Hill. Unfortunately, the reports and case totals continue to be plagued by mistakes and errors. The Commissioner's Court is 100% certain that the COVID-19 data being reported is inaccurate. Let's look at they feel so strongly about this, Dr. Paul. Put up that next clip. They put this on their dashboard. This is where they give all the data for COVID. A huge red warning. Everything you're about to read here is completely bogus because the state is botching the numbers. That is astonishing. This is a county. This is a Texas county saying that our state is completely bogus on this. And let's have some more follies here. You mentioned Burks, and this is from this article here. If we can look at the next one, please. Burks notes harm of virus fatigue. It's terrible. People are sick of having their lives ruined. And here's even some little bit more context to that quote, Dr. Paul, and I even underlined, let's look at the next, the next clip here. There's that quote. The antecedent is great. I've just been so struck by the number of Americans across the country that have just had it, she says, and this is it. Mortality decreases have complicated matters. Darn it, people are not dying like they should be, and this is frustrating.
She's less of a saint right now. Yeah. If anybody would know what's going on there, she has caused a lot of harm, and she's been around and accepted for so many years, and was euphoric about the attention that she's been getting.
Yeah,
and that means if she is not to do harm, so to speak, but to discredit her and take her off this pedestal of she knows everything. That has to be done, because I always argue the case, there's somebody who's is viewed as being idealistic and knows the ideas and the explanation. She has been the promoter. She's been the philosopher behind all this and gave it authenticity. And that has to be reversed. And that's what we're seeing happening. And she's getting a little nervous. Let's make her a little bit more nervous. What is she gonna say when she knows we have a million subscribers? You know? Then she'll have to be concerned.
How dare you stop dying? Here's one that's actually a little bit more sick and a little bit more serious. And this is from the UK. But I would not doubt this is not the case, was not the case here in the U.S. Care homes, which we would call nursing homes, were asked to place a blanket do not resuscitate order on residents at the height of the pandemic. I mean, when you talk about that, there's a half step between that and just going and shooting these older people in the head. I mean, it is that, I mean, a blanket, everyone in this place, if you get sick, you're on your own. That is sick. And here's the next one, and I know you want to comment on this, Dr. Paul. This is something that came out. This is Bloomberg opinion. I think this is from today. Yeah, no, this is from the 22nd. An epidemic of depression and anxiety among young adults. As COVID-19 spreads, now that is fake, because it's not the 19 that's spreading, it's the reaction to it. It's the lockdowns, it's the destruction of our economy. Well, he says, as COVID spreads, so do mental health problems, especially among Gen Z and millennials. A lot of this has to do with uncertainty. Oh, really? You think so? You know, I mean, he gets part of it right, but it's not the virus that's causing these kids to be flung into depression. It's having their senior year stolen. It's having their football taken away from them. Things that they've practiced their whole lives to do, getting ready for school, everything snatched from them. Oh, I wonder why the kids are so depressed.
Yeah, you know, they do have people pretty close dealing with the elderly, the people that don't look like they're going to get better. Bill Gates has an idea of what they have to do. But did you see where Sanger, they wanted to remove her name from Planned Parenthood because they got some other, that's sort of payback a little bit, which is deserving, you know, this whole idea that she's been placed on as a saint on this. And if you talk about protecting minorities, you won't find it in that. I don't think, you know, even this whole thing of the things that the people are doing in the name of helping the minorities. You know, this whole thing about the lockdown. You know, we always knew there's shortcomings of public education, but some people have become very dependent on it. The people who are going to get hurt the most with this so-called lockdowns will be the minorities.
Yeah.
You know, they have all their reasons to argue why they're have more trouble than the others, but they put the regulations in. Then it's back to, are they doing this on purpose?
Yeah.
Probably some are, or is this just stupidity, or is it just follow the leader? You know, we have to say this and do this. But anyway, the results are what really count, and that's what we're going to keep talking about. If the results are bad, you better look at why we're following those procedures. And to me, it's not complicated. Too much government, not enough freedom of choice. And if we emphasize that and always move, I always believed that there's no way that I will live to see, nor can anybody achieve perfect liberty. And there are some that believe they can have perfect tyranny. So when they're doing something in civil liberties or what, I said, as long as you're getting more liberty, I can accept it. Not oh, I can't accept this because it's not a granting perfect liberty. But if they can give us more liberty and more away from it, but we've lost, just think of what's happened since the year 2000, since 9/11. How much liberties have we lost? And this is another big step. 9/11 was a big deal. Now this coronavirus and the spying that is going on and this lockdown, all these economic powers that they have. But it's all being done with not a proper procedure. It's sort of, they all think they're the Federal Reserve. They just do what they want anytime they want, and they can spend trillions of dollars, and they're not responsible for going to Congress unless it's Saturday afternoon and they want to make a political point, and then we can do that. We can have everybody come back and say, well, we're saving the country because we opened up the Congress and we're going to spend some more money. But the big stuff is not legislatively, and the big stuff here is not legislative. How many governors and how many mayors and how many county commissioners did things actually without proper authority?
Yeah.
Just about everything that's been done has not had proper authority.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I'm going to wind down here, but I do want to mention, we've talked a little bit about schooling and the disasters, the whole thing about if your kids are going to public school online because the teacher's too lazy to go back to school, well, they better watch their classes or they're going to be sent to the slammer, you are. And we even, actually, I didn't mention, but when you said that, it reminded me that one of the school districts made the parents promise to not watch the lessons online with their kids. Makes you wonder, what are they trying to hide? Well, there's one place where you're going to want to watch the lessons online with your kids if you have the time, and that's the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum. And there is a way out, and this is a great way out, and we're mentioning this because our friend Tom Woods would like to offer some discounts to parents who are looking for solutions, K through 12 education, self-taught. The kids are teaching themselves, they're motivating themselves. They don't have to be ashamed or embarrassed that their parents might see what they're learning. In fact, they'll be proud of it. RonPaulHomeschool.com is a great place. Tom's offering some discounts for parents, and it's worth checking out. And I'm going to close with a picture, Dr. Paul, because this just points out that this has nothing to do with public health, with protection. Let's look at that picture. I saw this morning, it made me sick. Here's a symphony. Look at these people. They're playing their instruments. They have a little zipper hole in their face where they're putting their horns and their flutes and all of these things. This should tell you more than anything. This is not about fighting a virus. This is about theater. It's about compliance. It's about psychological manipulation. Cover your face so people can't see you. This is what's happening to our society, and that's, I think, at least speaking for myself, Dr. Paul, that's what motivates me to get up every morning, is to fight this horrible tyranny.
Well taken. Point's well taken. And another word we can use in what you were talking about is the word submission. Submission has a lot of meaning to it, and it has spiritual meaning, it has economic meaning, it has political meaning, and that's what I see. That's why, even a short period of time, I have a personal opinion, and I can't tell other people what to do because I understand that if they have to submit a little bit and try to survive and their jobs or whatever, that doesn't bother me. But for me, even if it's 1 minute to wear the mask in order to get across one doorstep, and I see that as submitting to a lot of monstrosities that are coming out of Washington, D.C., and I've always argued the case that if you acknowledge that a certain program is okay because it's only 5% of the budget, you acknowledge the whole thing. It's the principle of the thing. So if you submit to and acknowledge that wearing masks is good, and there's no reason why you can't do that. The big difference is should it be by the authoritarians and designing all the conditions and ending up what we have, or should something like this, which is complex, and I understand it from a medical viewpoint, a scientific viewpoint, a political viewpoint, a personal viewpoint, is that masks are pretty important, and there's a need to have full understanding. But much of what was the understanding and the proper use of a mask has been canceled by these authoritarians coming in. You will wear the mask, if not, we'll put you in jail and do all these kind of things. You will suffer the consequence. the other day, I frequently bring up sports, but and I didn't have the station on purpose, but somebody else was watching it in my living room, and I was going by, and it was a baseball game going on, and of course I couldn't find anybody watching the game. There was a bunch of pictures put up there, which was disgusting, and then the batter came up, and he was ready to bat, and he had a mask on. Here he is playing baseball, and he has a mask on, probably how many, 9, 15 people, and they're strictly controlling the people in the dugout, and it has no grain of correctness. They're wrong. It's all control, and it's all so symbolic, and you see it all the time, the people. And they've admitted this. You have to do it even when you're doing Skype. Because if you're doing that and talking to people or doing something in school, you have to set the example. You have to submit and do it as they tell you to do it. And that's why what we need, where we are really short of, is a spirit of liberty and people willing to recognize how valuable it is. And it is a source of peace and prosperity and happiness. That's why, it isn't a promise of everybody being taken care of, everybody's equal, and everybody's going to get all this. It's the sense of being free to make your own decisions and assuming those responsibilities. But what we're going through now is the cancellation on this. We're terrorizing, we're making fear, people become more hateful, and they submit because they don't see anything else to do. But it's time, as far as I'm concerned, is to quit submitting to illegal, immoral directions by a bunch of bureaucrats and authoritarians who don't know what they're doing except they want more power. It's not a complicated problem, and the answer, as far as I'm concerned, is rather simple. Just declare your independence and your liberties and go take care of yourself. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.